Let me just set the record straight right off the bat. That is my real hair in that video. We're going to start the meeting with an invocation from Pastor Todd Carter, and then following Pastor Carter's invocation, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us for both of those. Pastor Carter, great to have you.
Great to be here, and great to be able to pray for you. Let's pray together. Oh, Father in heaven, I just thank you so much, God, for this place and for the people of Wichita. And God, I thank you so much for my friends, God, my fellow Wichitans that are gathered here. God, just their expertise, their gifts, their abilities, God, that we've just come together today to leverage, God, for the betterment of our city. And God, I just pray, especially today, God, for our mayor and for our city commissioners, Lord. I just know what it is to carry the weight of leadership. God, I pray that you would just make their load lighter. And God, that you just would give them wisdom and discernment, Lord, as we discuss the matters at hand today. And God, I just pray as well, God, for this week of Riverfest, Lord. Lord, I just thank you so much just for the opportunity just to be able to have a great time as a city. Lord, I just thank you that you're the author of the good time. And God, I just pray, just keep people safe. God, just pray for all of our first responders, Lord, and just all the extra duties they're doing. God, I just pray that you would keep them safe, watch over them. And God, just thank you so much for their model of sacrificial service. And Lord, we just give today and this time to you, and we just pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Carter, great to see you this morning. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of May 28th, 2019. Any changes or corrections? Let's see if I can get to a voting stage on here. If there's no changes or corrections, and I don't have the proper screen up on my. There we go. All right. Thank you. You could have just walked over and did it.
I'll do that next time.
We don't have any changes or corrections, so I move that we approve the May 28th meeting minutes.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. And it looks like we have a couple of awards to give out this morning. So our first award this morning is for the Fire Training Academy. So if I could have Chief Snow and Mr. Bevis and all of the rest of the group. No, we'll turn it over. Are you going to handle it? All right. We'll turn it over to Stu Bevis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Manager Layton. We're here to recognize the members of the 2019 Citizens Fire Academy and congratulate them on their successful completion of the Academy. We hope that they found their experiences with the fire department enjoyable and educational. Our goal was to give them a glimpse into the daily lives of firefighters who serve our community. By handling the tools of the trade and allowing hands-on involvement, we wanted to give you the opportunity to better understand our profession and the dedication of its members. Over a 10-week program, the people behind me experienced vehicle extrication, special operations, fire scene operations, medical emergencies, and also learning things about our community risk reduction strategies. In addition, they also were shown the history of the fire department to understand where we came from and where we're heading, and got to see a lot of the things behind the curtains, I guess Wizard of Oz reference, including our partners with Emergency Communications, 911. We want to thank them for participating. It was a pleasure and honor to have them with us and for them to see all the ways that the fire department strives to serve the community. We hope that their involvement with us was very memorable as well. They did have a first. It was the first time we had a piece of machinery, a tool break while they were learning how to cut into cars. And in the tradition of the fire service, they bought ice cream, so it worked out really well. I really want to thank Lieutenant Ignacio Ayala, Iggy, and Captain Jose Oquedes, who helped run the academy this year. They did an outstanding job. Briefly, I want to just, the names of our participants who graduated from the academy: Lou Leon, Margaret Wiggins. No, that's the other one, I think so. Ariana Davis, Lisa Wang, Corey Reed, Tim Duncan, Ann Duncan. I think they were the root beer float people who really took care of us, right? Melissa Stout, Jessica Pereira, Daniel Longstaff, Colleen McGee, Caleb Underwood, and Michelle Cadena. Once again, I want to thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to recognize. Thank you.
Next are some supplier diversity awards, so if we can have Chris Hazlett join me. And Chris, we have several awards to hand out. So this is part of our EBE and DBE goal achievement that I want to share with you. So pleased to acknowledge the city departments that have met or exceeded the 2018 goals for spending with emerging and disadvantaged business enterprises. The city of Wichita is committed to the development and support of emerging and disadvantaged business enterprises, including minority and women-owned businesses. Increasing their representation and utilization helps grow the number of contractors and vendors available to the city. This in turn not only provides opportunities for EBE and DBE firms, but it also helps reduce the price the city pays for goods and services. In 2018, the city purchased over $39 million in goods and services from EBE and DBE firms. That represents over 16% of the dollars spent by the city. To ensure maximum participation and utilization of the certified EBE businesses, department goals are established each year. Today, I want to recognize and thank the following departments that have exceeded their 2018 goals and who continue to help make the program a success. And do we want them to come up, or are you going to have them pick these up? Okay. So we'll just grab them off the table here. So the first is our Wichita Library Group. Cynthia, good job.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, congratulations. Second group is water utilities. Al?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good job. And our next group is the fire department. They're just busy all the time. Thank you. Next group is human resources. Do we have, who's here to represent human resources? Bob? Our airport. Congratulations. Our our next group is Information Technology, or as Brian Fry would say, IT. Parks and Recreation. Thank you. And our next group is Public Works and Utilities.
Thank you.
How many divisions do you run? Our Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. Thank you. And then we have our Wichita Transit. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor.
Awesome work. And this would be last and least, no, Finance Department. Thank you all, and anyone want to be a spokesperson for the group? Are we good? All right, well, we appreciate it. Item, please.
Fritz Hens, helping people on the streets.
Is Fritz Hintz with us this morning? I think he was a no-show last time, wasn't he? All right, Madam Clerk, let's go on to the next item.
Consent agenda items 1 through 12.
Are there any items on the consent that need to be pulled for clarification or discussion? Seeing none, I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. The motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Board of Bids and Contracts.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Hannah Lane, Department of Finance. Today I present to you the Board of Bids report from the June 3rd Board of Bids. First engineering bid we have is manhole rehabilitation and reconstruction project. Recommendation is reject all bids. Next bid is sanitary sewer improvements for Blue Lake Edition. Recommendation is dueling construction for an aggregate total of $280,904. Water distribution system to serve Blue Lake Edition. Recommendation is Dutton Construction and Plumbing for $52,365. Paving at Driftwood Sunny Lane to serve Edgewater 3rd Edition. Recommendation is Conspec Incorporated for $206,282.30. Next paving is Peregrine to serve Falcon Falls 3rd Edition. Recommendation is Pearson Construction for $217,221.36. 2019 sanitary sewer reconstruction phase 4. Recommendation is Dutton Construction and Plumbing for $54,115.90. Water distribution system to serve Wilson Farms 5th Edition. Recommendation is Dutton Construction and Plumbing for an aggregate total of $125,442. 2019 OP3 CIP concrete street and crosswalk repairs phase 1. Recommendation is Barclay Construction for $499,760. Sanitary sewer reroute to serve 525 North Broadway. Recommendation is Amigo Excavating and Plumbing for $195,600. Valve replacement at 21st and Hillside. Recommendation is Wildcat Construction for $228,925. Water distribution system to serve Northridge Plaza Edition. Recommendation is Donliner and Sons Construction for $53,600. 2019 OP3 Joint and Crack Seal Phase 1. Recommendation is Circle C Paving and Construction for $243,700. First purchasing bid we have is Trash Containers and Collection Services. Recommendation is to defer to June 10th, 2019 Board of Bids. 40,000 GVWR Utility Trailer. Recommendation is to defer to June 10th, 2019 Board of Bids. And the last purchasing bid we have is furniture for 322 Riverview Police Traffic Modular Furniture and Install. Recommendation is John A. Marshall for $188,927.81. That's all the bids. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Anyone have any questions on the awards? Seeing none, I would move that we award the bids as mentioned.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Building facade improvements, project closeout, 303 South Broadway.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The project before you is a project closeout for the facade improvements at 303 South Broadway. The original project was approved back in October of 2016 to do the facade improvements on this project and set a maximum assessment at that time, knowing that when the project was complete, we would bring that back to the City Council to have the actual cost to set forth in doing the special assessments. This project had a maximum assessment at that time of $620,000 with the total project cost by the developer of a little over $5 million. This was the acquisition rehabilitation of the building. This was a unique redevelopment where the developer actually took an old unused parking garage and converted that into apartments that he now is leasing. So he did convert this into apartments, included just the cleaning and repairs of the walls, new windows and doors, also enclosing that east end to allow for the development into the apartments on that and all other work to bring the building up to all the code requirements. The aerial here is the image of where that location is there at the southwest corner of English and Broadway Street. And I'm going to start off with a few of what the building looked like originally, and then we'll show a few of the images of what the building looks like today. So as you can see, it's has the age and a little discoloration there on the building, as well as just needs a lot of improvement. And then this is what the building looks like today with the facade improvements and completed project. So originally this project was approved with the estimated project costs were $484,000. We always include a 10% contingency in that maximum assessment amount to allow for any overruns that may occur, any unforeseen issues with the building. And so when you total that with as well as financing costs and the admin fees, the maximum was set at $620,000. The total project came in at a little over $500,000. And so when you adjust for the admin fee and financing costs, which are generally ratios of the project cost, the final is $589,511. So with this, we would set the maximum assessment that would be spread against that building, and they'll be repaid over the next 15 years with special assessment financing bonds. And so the interest rate would be set by that bond sale, but then the city would be secured by a tax lien against that property for those 15 years. So with that, with the projects coming in lower than the original assessment amount, it's necessary now to make that adjustment and set the assessment equal to those final costs, which requires the amending ordinance that's being requested today. With that, the staff's recommendation would be to approve that final statement of costs and place that ordinance on first reading, authorizing necessary signatures. We also have the developer in the audience if you have any questions for him.
Any questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and it's really nice to see old buildings come back to life, and we'll turn this over to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did park down the street from this for the River Festival. It's a wonderful renovation of the building. So with that, I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Design concept and supplemental design agreement number 1 for 29th Street North and Mays Road intersection.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a recommendation for proposed improvements to the intersection of 29th Street North and Mays Road. This project is in District 5 towards the northwest corner of the city. Give you some quick background. In January of this year, the council approved a design agreement with Baughman Company for development of the concept that you'll see today for improvements to this intersection. Baughman has completed a traffic analysis along with our staff to help formulate recommendations for improving congestion and safety, particularly during the peak hours now and into the future. And on May 6th, District 5 Advisory Board approved the proposed concept by a vote of 8-0. This aerial is just a little bit grainy, but I wanted to just show, if you're not familiar with what's happened with development in the area at the time. So with the blue obviously being the intersection itself, the bottom of this aerial is 21st Street North. Dense commercial development all the way along the 2 miles from 21st Street to 37th, with there's still more in the works. A lot of platting that's been done there and site planning that's been done, especially you see southeast of the intersection where it's an open area, the Cadillac Lake, Proct Wetlands Park that just opened up, first phase. There's more development coming in that area. To the northeast corner is Sam's. The new church does not quite show up on this aerial just yet. And then going on up Mays Road towards 37th Street with Fox Ridge commercial development, there's some apartments there, and there's still room for more development in the area. So we've taken all into that account, looking at future traffic projections, looking at platting, looking at building permits, working with our planning department and the community investments plan to be able to take a look into the future and see what's going to happen here. This intersection was previously improved, includes left turn lanes in all directions, and it's working pretty well. But there's two primary movements that are causing a lot of issues right now that we have decided that we need to focus on, that we need to get done in the near future, and then we think this intersection will work really well beyond that. Current traffic counts on Mays Road are around 37,000 vehicles per day. That is projected to go over 45,000 in 2040. And on 29th Street, the current traffic counts of 21,000 vehicles per day are expected to exceed 28,000 also in the 2040 counts. Knowing that helps us reduce the scope of the original project that was programmed in the CIP, as we had anticipated the need to potentially rebuild the full intersection. The two areas we need to focus on, the first one is northbound Mays Road. This is really typical a lot of times during the day, especially during the peak hours, and you can see the considerable queuing northbound. We had thought at one time, before we had gotten recent traffic counts, that maybe we could just make that outside lane a right turn only, but looking at the distribution of traffic, it was split almost down the middle, that 50% of the traffic went straight and 50% of it turned right. Both of them are significant counts, which means both of them are needed. We need to maintain 2 through lanes, and we need to add a right turn lane. The challenge with doing that, as you can see, the ditch is there. It's fairly considerable effort and cost to extend a large drainage culvert. We'd have to make some modifications to the traffic signals, and therefore it becomes a lot bigger than just looking at a restriping or any type of maintenance project. The other movement that's causing issues now, these traffic delays have got real costs that go with them. There's added fuel. Over time, there are issues adding to air quality too when we've got traffic congestion at intersections like this. But looking at westbound 29th, there's a lot more left turn movements here than was ever projected when this intersection was first built, and there's a very short storage length with that median. So we can go in and make some changes there relatively easy and relatively quick to extend that left turn bay to allow additional turning movements during the peak hours to make this a lot more efficient and a lot safer. I just wanted to show this real quick. We've got some traffic modeling software that we use that works really well. Again, I talked about looking at future plats, looking at building permits. We can do a lot to project future traffic. And this simulation model shows us what we can expect traffic to do and what it to look like. The colors of the cars actually do mean something. on that east leg of the intersection, you can see the green in the median is what's causing some of the real problems. Those blue cars are for left turns, the yellow is for right, and the white is through. That is based on actual traffic counts and modeling over time that you can project a good average of what traffic is going to do. This is a really handy tool for us. We use this across the city, especially on our arterial streets, on our freeways, and our intersections to help us see what the future. This is a live model. It's hard for me to show here, but it actually shows you over time what happens with the queuing. This was just a still shot to give you some idea of what we do with this. As I mentioned, there's the two improvements we're looking at the most is northbound and westbound. We do believe that making those improvements sometime in the near future will outlive the lifespan of the existing pavement, meaning any investment we make now, we don't plan on being back to make any other improvements until we need to replace the full intersection. The adopted capital improvement program includes construction funding in 2022 for replacement of the full intersection, as I mentioned. This concept before you today, we think will allow us to cut that estimated cost in half, if not more, to be able to make just the two primary improvements that we are recommending. This just shows you real quick kind of what that looks like on that north leg, again, where we'd have to close up the ditch and make improvements, and then on the east leg too. This will make the intersection work a lot more efficiently, a lot safer. There are some accidents that can be shown as part of the issues that we look at on that queuing of traffic northbound and westbound that we think we can help lower those number of accidents. Staff recommends completing the design now. We would also have some right-of-way to acquire. That way the project is construction ready whenever funding is available. The existing budget is $70,000. The CIP includes $300,000 in 2018, which we are recommending, asking for approval of today to finish the design and to begin right-of-way acquisition. As I mentioned, in 2022, the CIP includes $2.5 million, but that was when we were projecting the need to completely rebuild the intersection, and we think we can do it for less than half of that at this point. Still with that funding being in 2022 as of now. With that, staff recommends the council approve the design concept, the supplemental design agreement number 1, and revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, authorize necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this point? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and I'll hand this over to Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This intersection is the #1 traffic issue I get in my district, and as we saw in slide 5, that backs up, but it's all the time. Sunday afternoon at 1:45, it was backed up worse. So having a creative solution to fix this problem and saving us dollars is very well received. Thank you, staff. So with that, I recommend that we approve the design concept supplemental design agreement number 1 with the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Ordinance amending chapters 9 and 11 pertaining to operation of electric scooters and pilot operating agreement.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Mike Tan, Director of Transit. As we travel along our path of allowing scooter companies to come into Wichita and potentially become members and participants of our pilot program, there's a couple documents today for your consideration that we'd like to give you some background on so that hopefully we can continue down this path. When we originally started with pilot consideration with the city manager's leadership and direction, we formed a team that consisted of the police department, obviously the city manager's office, our legal team, the transit department, park department, and public works. As we started the process, we thought the best way to begin was to review current practices by other communities and municipalities that had active pilot or scooter programs. At the time, there was about 60, so we had a good baseline in order to work off of for information. We also had scooter companies come in and make demonstrations, and we've also had a number of ongoing discussions with those companies to make sure that we're staying up on the changes, which at certain times can become quite a few changes, I should say, because of technology. We've drafted a pilot program and made some changes to ordinances that would be required in order to have a pilot program. We've had that reviewed by multiple districts that we feel will probably be impacted the most by any pilot program. And then also the advisory boards, we also sat down and had conversations with them too. And we are at step 5 with regards to that. The municipal code changes that we are looking at and adding to would allow for scooters to be used in bike lanes and on bike paths, to prohibit their use on sidewalks, to prohibit parking in selected areas, for the ability for staff to impound scooters, and also a requirement that operators be at least 18 years of age. In conjunction with that, the pilot program has a number of different entities to it that we'd like to make sure each company participates in. The first being, we want multiple scooter companies to come in. We want to see what they have, what their product is, what the advantages and disadvantages of their business models. We want to make sure that we can control the number of scooters per fleet. We've put that in a range of 100 to 500 scooters. We want to make sure that they have a documented and stout maintenance and safety program. They also have the required insurance. They can provide us with the data that's required in order for us to make sure that it is being successfully monitored, and also fees are being properly accounted for. And we want to make sure that we can establish speed and restriction zones based upon our community's wants and needs. Some of the other things that we put in the pilot that is also in the ordinance, and we wanted to make sure we were consistent, was the not being allowed on sidewalks. We wanted to keep it on streets that have less than 40 miles per hour on the speed limit, and make sure that they understand that the bike lanes and the path, as it is in the ordinance, would also be applied to the pilot. As far as hours of operation, we've had a number of discussions with direction of the other scooter companies that we've talked to. We feel that the dawn to dusk or 9 p.m. Is a good timeline to work in with daylight savings time, but also gets the scooters off the street and collected and back into their repair stations at a reasonable time. And they're not out on the street when cars are operating and it's dark. Any immediate parking violations obviously will be used as a grading tool for all of the pilot companies, but also too, we wanted to make sure that both in the pilot and in the ordinance, it is understood by all potential participants that the city can remove any scooters that are either creating a hazard or that have been reported by either residents or by business owners. Most of that will be accomplished by the transit department. We have staff on the street at all times and have the ability to capture those and to bring them back to our facility. We want to make sure that this is not a burden on Wichita Police. In the pilot program, we have some costing. We came up with an impound fee of $32 per scooter. There'll be an annual administrative cost based upon the size of the fleet, varying between $5,000 and $1,000. And there'll also be a general ride fee. Each time that a rider activates a scooter, there'll be a 15-cent charge each time. On average, a successful scooter program is seeing their deployment at 3 rentals per day. With that, our recommendation, staff recommendation, is to endorse the pilot operating agreement, place the ordinance in first reading, and authorize all necessary signatures. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tan, I had 2 questions for you. our green sheet says that the scooters cannot operate at speeds greater than 15 miles per hour, but the ordinance on page 8 says 20.
It is 15. That's a typo. We have had a conversation with the Bike Ped Advisory Board, and that number is 15.
Okay. And then my second question, just for the public, since I read it, if someone is under the influence of alcohol and they want to ride a scooter back home, can they operate the scooter?
They can operate the scooter, but there is a safety sheet that comes up when they go to rent the scooter. And on that, one of the check boxes is they have to state that they are not under the influence of alcohol.
So if they say that they are, they can't ride it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councilmember Clendenin?
Mr. Chan, thank you so much for the presentation. I've recently been in a couple different cities, DC and Fort Lauderdale, and was able to use the scooters in those cities. They allow scooters at nighttime. What is our reasoning for not allowing nighttime riding in scooters?
One of our concerns is that this is a new technology for Wichita. We want to make sure that, as well as being a learning process for the users of the scooters, that it's a learning process for our citizens. And to make sure that we walk before we run in this process. We think that the pilot program allows us to learn and allows our citizens to learn to see if this is a good thing for them. But we feel strongly that having them off before it gets dark, we can potentially start to evaluate things from that standpoint. And again, for us to all get used to how this technology is going to work and control that.
I appreciate that. I hope that everybody, it works out, because knowing that since we can't operate buses at nighttime and weekends, it would be wonderful for people to have. Those scooters can travel, I think, 15 miles on a charge or something like that.
In fact, one of the scooter companies in their marketing tool is really pushes the first mile, last mile solution. So as other options come up, we feel that this becomes part of a multimodal plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Claycomb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Tan. I have just two questions. So this is a year-long pilot. So how are we going to evaluate this at the end of that time? I know you mentioned looking at their parking violations, but what else? And will it come back to council with, what you find?
We're going to be looking at customer service, both internally and externally. We're going to be looking at their ride frequency. We'll be looking at their maintenance programs. Most of the scooter companies now actually return the scooters back to their facility that they will have here in Wichita and work on those. So we'll make sure that we maintain there and keep track of their maintenance records to make sure they're in compliance with those. And then obviously the general overall feel of how they interact with our citizens, how they interact with our businesses. There is a clause that we can cancel a pilot with 30 days notice. We feel very strongly that we've had very good conversations with the companies that have expressed interest. I think they know the direction and understand where we're going, and we'll be very respectful of those processes. But staff at Transit is very much dedicated to making sure that we take advantage of this 12-month pilot that we have to make sure we evaluate how good they are providing and how good their product is.
Okay. And I'd like to see the results come back to council at that time.
Absolutely.
Then my second question is the fee that they pay, the application fee, and then the 15 cents per ride. Where does that money go to?
That money, the administrative fee would actually go towards covering the cost of the processes that have to go through here at City. The 15 cents per trip, we would like to see that go back into the infrastructure to support bike paths and the signage and whatnot to make it again more customer and user friendly. We would like to see that money go back into the actual system itself, the bike ped and scooter system.
Thank you.
Mike, the advantage that we have is we're really not out in front on this particular opportunity. Other cities have tried it. We've seen lots of different problems. The question I have is we have a pretty lengthy list of do's and don'ts, rules and restrictions. How does the rider know our restrictions? Do we just simply have them listed on a contract somewhere? How do we notify the individuals of all of our restrictions when they're used to riding these in other cities that may not have the same set of restrictions?
They'll pull it up on the app, just like when they go to actually rent the scooter, there'll be an agreement of usage that will come up. One will have the safety requirements, the other will have any other information that needs to go to them. Everything is on the screen and tells them exactly what our rules of the road are and what the rules of participation of each of the pilot attendees. So every time they rent a scooter, they're given the rules of the road and the renter's agreement, if that's what you like to call it.
So that's gonna be a lengthy document. I doubt that anyone's gonna read through that lengthy document. Is there a better way that we can let people know that they can't ride on sidewalks, that they can't ride on the street, and just have an abbreviated version of something that educates them? Because my guess is, most people are not going to read that document when they jump on a scooter.
I agree, sir. I think what we'll probably do, now that we've migrated from the original proposal that Byrd brought forward of just having scooters all over the place, to actually having areas that they have to be dropped off in and picked up in, that there would be signage at those locations that would give a overview in large text and tell people what it is, our level of expectation and safety. And then also the intent is to also have it on our web pages, so as people visit the city and they wish to access the type of services, a basic synopsis would also come up. But I think with the fact we're gonna be moving to a set area of drop-off and pickup, we can take advantage of the fact that that's where the interaction will be to get those things in front of them.
And I would use that as an opportunity to also grade the scooter companies on how well they educate the public on the restrictions.
Yes, sir, I agree.
So, no other questions. We'll open it up to the public. Would anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? If you can just come to the podium and state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Mike Pearson. Live at 8118 East Grove Street. My only concern with bringing in these scooters is how is that going to affect the current citizens that already own electric mobile devices, such as electric longboards, basically a scooter without a handle. Because I saw in the original document that along with everything else, they are trying to make it to where the electric longboards or electric skateboards have to stay on sidewalks and are not allowed in city streets. When every one of my friends that own electric longboards, they're able to operate at greater speeds than these Byrd scooters. A lot of us are concerned that with bringing in these Byrd scooters, you are actively pushing us out of the street and onto dangerous sidewalks filled with pedestrians and lots of cracks and obstructions that are not only hazards to, us, it is hazards to other pedestrians, because if we crash, we don't have a handle to stop our board, then that could end up in someone's ankle. So there's a lot of safety issues that are kind of coming along with bringing all of these regulations in. Some other concerns too, really that's pretty much it. Me and a lot of my friends, we've spent well over $1,000 on our personal vehicles to be able to commute from home to work, and we don't want to see that diminished because of some company coming in and pushing us out.
Okay? So we'll have him come up after the speakers are done and answer that, all right?
Okay.
Was there any other speakers?
I think it's a great concept, and maybe I couldn't hear him completely. I was wondering about how many people are going to be on the pilot. How many different companies with about how many units, and have they selected a place to have the pilot? I know they're not going to do the whole city, so
Okay.
that's an important strategy. Thank you.
And you forgot to share your name and,
Doug Ballard, 920 Buff.
thank you, Doug. Any other speakers?
Thank you. I'm Alan Kaler, 7924 West Birdie Lane Circle, and I'm president of Bike Walk Wichita, and speaking on behalf of Bike Walk Wichita, which has over 300 active volunteers, 5,000 supporters throughout the city. Our mission is to make biking and walking safe, equitable, and appealing in Wichita, and we strongly endorse the pilot program for the e-scooters, primarily because it is a fundamental fact that the more people that you have using the bike lanes and the pedestrian facilities in the city, the more that motorists are going to be looking for people in those areas and be watching out for them. And so having the scooters as additional users in those facilities, we think will enhance the safety for all of the users and all of the citizens of the city. So we think that the staff has done a great job on considering the different issues involved. Regulation is necessary for these, as the mayor alluded to. There have been difficulties in some cities, but I think the staff has done a great job in their due diligence in reviewing the issues, and I think we'll do a good job in overseeing the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. Mike, can you come back to the podium and try and address a couple of these questions? One, how will this impact the longboards, and are we pushing them to the sidewalks?
When we addressed the ordinances and the pilot, we made sure to identify in those documents what this was covering. I can't really attest to a sidebar effect to another type of transportation. We clearly identify in here what this covers, and that is an electric scooter with wheels no larger than 12 inches with a handlebar to steer. Again, that's a conversation that as technology evolves and the type of equipment that's available and what that does in the long term, that's really not what our intent was here, to get into those discussions with regards to that. We were dealing with and are dealing with reputable scooter companies and their equipment, and making sure that that functions well for our city. The longboard situation, I know it's been discussed both publicly and privately as to how that long-term effect is, but quite frankly, there's really been no resolution as to, or discussion from that standpoint. It's always been focused on scooters, so it's not really an answer, but it's probably the direction that we've always gone.
At this point, longboards are still allowed on the street? They're not?
Mayor, I believe under the ordinance, they're allowed on sidewalks.
So did I mistakenly think that the speaker was saying we're forcing them to sidewalks into dangerous situations? They're only allowed on sidewalks?
That's the way I read the ordinance at this point.
The current ordinance?
The ordinance in front of you now, I believe, has skateboards on sidewalks and not allowed on streets.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I'm not sure what's safer. Should we park the skateboards on the street, or? That'll be interesting. So maybe the pilot
I think the question
will
too
help
is also the
flush that out.
skateboard, whether it's an electrified skateboard or the old school skateboard like other generations had experienced. And again, these are completely different entity than the traditional skateboard. And it does bring I think a whole different area. We may have to revisit that from the standpoint of looking to see how the ordinance applies to those motorized skateboards.
Yeah, I think we need to track the unintended consequences and make sure that there isn't something that becomes a hazard because of this.
Agreed. The second question that had to do with how many companies we thought would come in. There is no limit on the number of pilots, but we've really only had serious conversations and approached by 5. I think the city of Wichita, as they came in and started to learn about our community, I think there is as there is for every other company, there's a right size for every community. And so I think we're going to end up with mostly between a 250 and a 500 deployment, and probably going to end up with maybe 3, maybe 4. But I think it's going to be a matter of who has the most interest, who's ready to truly come in and to evaluate and to meet, because quite frankly, the process, if it's approved, is probably going to be a 4-week process of them coming in, learning us, we learn them, they provide documentation, we provide information, and then we start to determine where it is. But I think as staff has been talking, again, I think we're thinking the 3 to 4 range, and most of them are probably going to be in excess of 250, but less than 500. But they're mostly going to be looking in the downtown, centralized core urbanized area up to and including potentially WSU.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Tan, I had 2 more questions.
Sir.
Can you kind of articulate the steps we've taken to make sure that we'll still be aesthetically pleasing with these scooters and we don't see them all over the place like we've seen in other cities?
We've taken a lot of time to make sure that we're staying abreast of those situations. Like the mayor had mentioned, this is probably a good time to not be at the forefront. I think there's a lot of communities that were originally approached, or they just all of a sudden woke up one morning and found thousands of scooters sitting on their streets and they didn't know how to deal with them. We've been very deliberate and very communicative with the potential participants, and we feel very strongly that the approach that is currently seems to be driving the market of having set areas that are in agreement between the city and the company, where they are dropped off and picked up at, and where they are deployed from every morning and returned to by the company. And there are representatives working for the company in our city. That completely changes some of the problems that your larger metropolitan areas have. We do have plenty of space in order to allot for scooter, bike parking, all those types of things. We're very fortunate in the center core area to have spaces that we can do that. And again, that's going to be a grading point for that. So our belief is that that is the way that we should go with all pilot participants, is that there's clearly identified and delineated spaces to be dropped off and picked up, and then the scooters are removed every night from the street, taken back to a central location, repaired, replaced, charged up, and then brought back, deployed. So we think that from that standpoint, that's going to go a long way to remove the clutter and some of the other things that cities are dealing with scooters just sitting around. So again, the practice will be, the proof will be in the practice, I guess, from that standpoint. But again, with being a pilot and that being a contention of grading, I think that we're going to see, hopefully, a lot of positive from that.
Awesome. Secondly, I am generally supportive of this, but I do have concerns about approving this and the secondary effects that might happen to folks like the young man who talked today if we do this and then the ordinance changes and we haven't really flushed that part out. Is there a way we can kind of set up some meetings with riders of hoverboards and kind of see what their usual patterns are and find a way to come to an agreement on that?
Certainly, I agree with that. Again, I think technology is changing so fast. We started a discussion and 2 or 3 other things percolate up that are not directly related to what we're doing, but I most certainly would agree with you on that side. Yes, sir.
That was it. Do hoverboards really hover?
It's not like Back to the Future yet.
Okay, just checking. All right, well, Mike, thank you, and I agree with what Councilmember Claycomb said. We really do want this to come back to us for a full evaluation at the end of the pilot.
Well, the other thing too, I think I neglected to mention is that our belief is that each pilot agreement should stand on its own merit in front of City Council. So we would like to come to you with each agreement and then state, and obviously the consistency will be there, but we'd like for City Council to approve each pilot as it comes up. And then we would report to you the results, either a quarterly or mid-year or however you'd like to see that. But I think that's a key component of this also.
All right, thank you. If there's no other questions, I would move that we take the staff recommended action for this pilot project.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Aquatics Master Plan Options.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Hill. I'm the manager of O.J. Watson Park and the aquatics program. Very excited to be presenting to you today. This is a plan that we've been working on for quite some time. Put a lot of time and community engagement and lifeblood into this, and we're very excited to show you what we have come up with today. I have many members of my team present that will be able to answer some questions at the conclusion. Just to kind of familiarize yourself with what we're doing and why we're doing this. Most of our city pools are over the age of 50 years old. When they were first built, they were meant to last about 30 years. So Public Works and Park Maintenance has done an incredible job of keeping them going well past their date of expiration. But we knew that they were eventually going to fail. We needed to do something to figure out what we're doing with the future, what we wanted to see the aquatics program look like. We put it out to the community, and we've got quite a bit of support that they wanted to see swimming pools, neighborhood swimming pools, that they wanted to see the city of Wichita to still operate an aquatics program. So we had three options that we were looking at. Option one was the 3 built regional pools with 1 updated neighborhood pool, and we were the creation of 7 new splash pads. Option 2 was to create 1 large water park, have 1 updated neighborhood pool, and have 9 new splash pads. And the third option was to have 6 updated neighborhood pools with 6 new splash pads. Overwhelmingly, the support from the citizens from our DAB meetings and from our online surveys was option 3. Everybody wanted to see the pools stay in neighborhoods, be able to get to pools closer, have ability to swim, have increased hours of operation. So option 3 breaks down as this. We'll be retaining Ailey, College Hill, Harvest, McAdams, Manissa, and Orchard pools. We will be converting 4 pools into splash pads, which are Boston, Edgemore, Evergreen, and Linwood, and there's the creation of 2 new splash pads in Harrison and Plainview. We estimate that the cost recovery of our aquatics programs will move up to 60%. Currently, we hover around 33%. The operational costs of the pools and splash pads are listed. The most important component of this, though, is that we're increasing operational hours. This is something that we've heard over and over again from the citizens. We wanted to have better hours at our pools. Currently, most of our pools are operating from 1 to 6. They're only open 6 days a week. That gives us about 30 open swim hours per week. One thing what our new system will allow us to do is we'll have 2 sessions of swim time, open swim time. We'll be open from 11 to 5. We'll then take an hour off for staff to get dinner, be able to offer some swimming lesson programs, other types of like aerobics that we have. Then we'll be open to the public at 6 o'clock and be open till 9. This will go on for 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Then we'll be open again on the weekends from noon to 6, Saturdays and Sundays. We close at 6. This allows us to do pool rentals and other programming options afterwards. This gives us 52 open swim hours per week. We are currently trying this as a pilot program over at Ailey Pool. We haven't done a lot of talk about it. We haven't put this out yet in the media as much as it is in our guide, and already we're seeing a great success with an average attendance of 75 people coming to the night sessions at Ailey Pool. Currently, our seasons run from Memorial Day to about the first week of August, and then we're shutting down. There's still several weeks before kids go back to schools. So with this new plan, we'll actually be increasing our length of the season all the way to the start of school, and then hopefully keep a few pools open through Labor Day. This map shows you the locations that we're discussing today. The locations in red are the pools. Locations in blue are the splash pads. As you'll notice on the left, many of these pools are breaking down and splash pads are into phase 1 and phase 2. This is a very aggressive plan that we'd like to take care of in 2 years. So phase 1 would include 3 pools and 3 splash pads, with the following phase 2 starting next year. The phase 1 projects are some of the pools that we currently have closed, like McAdams, Boston, and Edgemore. We want to make sure that those are the first phase, that we get those up and running as locations as soon as possible. This next map kind of gives you a breakdown of the new sites with existing sites. As you can see, we're spread out quite a bit across the city. We do have kind of a glaring gap in the southwest corner there. The reason is this: we don't currently have any facilities there, and this plan focuses mostly on existing structures. It also is a very industrial zone. Hopefully at some point, as the aquatics plan moves forward, we could look at possibly adding water feature in this area at some point in the future. Before we get into the actual plans and kind of giving you the highlights of the themes and the ideas that were going on, just kind of a general thing of what we look for with our design team and our local artists was what can we do to make these extremely unique experiences? How can we be creative? How can we take something and make people remember their times here and having fun? We wanted to make sure they were inclusive for the whole family. We also wanted to make sure that all ADA concerns were being addressed. Many of these facilities are, like I said, aged, and we're going to try to get the most use we can out of them. So starting off with, this is a phase 1 project, this Boston Pool. This pool is slated to become a splash pad. This has an aviation theme. One of the things that was really interesting is our local artists realized that all of our pools kind of follow along some sort of water system here in the city. This one follows along the Gypsum Creek area. We wanted to celebrate the history of Wichita with it being air capital. Many of the fun features of this location are the water play elements with the planes. We have focus on a lot of different seating, shade structures. And one thing that's also been added is a Swallow trainer plane. This is the plane that really got aviation going here in Wichita. This is one of the big things that brought a lot of the companies in, and a lot of the companies made their start in was building the Swallow trainer plane. We want to make sure that we have something that kind of celebrates the history of the city. Edgemore Pool has been closed since 2012. This is another site that's going to be converted into a splash pad. This follows the Spring Creek system here in Wichita. It is quite a large footprint. It was a 50-meter pool, so we have quite a bit of space that we're going to try to use as much of the existing architecture as possible. As you can see, it's kind of a water cycle that's going to follow the evaporation, and the water comes back to the ground, flows, and then returns to the air. It's very interactive with water play features that kids can play with, fun shade structures, different types of seating. Once again, it just gives a different and unique experience from the previous splash pad. Evergreen Park is the third of the pools that are being converted to splash pads. This follows on the riverside system of the Little Arkansas. This one had quite a bit of community engagement with some local community leaders on what they'd like to see. There's already a lot of this theming area in this neighborhood. We wanted to stay true to that and continue and celebrate that history and that culture. There's a lot of fun elements with like the statues, different water features. You also notice that there's different symbols around the shield that we have there. This is an interactive system to where kids can figure out a code, and they go punch in a code into a controller box, and then they actually change the features of the splash pad. There'll be a sound system, lights will change, the water features will raise up higher, something for kids to have fun with and to try to figure out and to enjoy. The first of the phase 1 pool projects is we're going to look at is Ailey Pool. This pool, it follows along with the Big Arkansas River. I know it's Arkansas for you guys, but I'm an Okie, so I call it Arkansas. I apologize. This is going to be retained as a competition pool for us. We currently hold all our swim meets here, so we're going to keep the basic structure of the 6 lanes. But one thing that we're making sure to add is we're going to spread out the features. The pools are so linear. The fence goes right along the pool deck. We're really going to spread it out so there's more spaces for families to enjoy, to lay out, to relax. Creates some artificial turf berms, a lounge area. Creates new rental spaces that we can hold pool rentals during the day, that we don't have to wait for the pool to be closed for additional revenue options. The existing slide will stay, but we'll be adding some more shade structures, and this pool gets a climbing wall. The high dives are going away with all of our pools. Here we have Orchard Pool. This one follows along the Big Ditch. Very important, especially the last couple of weeks, while we've seen how well it does for the city. This pool, once again, is going to still retain its basic deck shape, but it adds a new multi-layer shade structure. A slide is going to be added to the features, as well as a climbing wall and artificial turf berm for people to enjoy. Very excited to see the different types of things. So it's not just the experience of just people being in the water, it's the entire package as you come and visit our sites. McAdams is the third project that we're focusing on for our phase 1 projects. This one had quite a bit of community engagement as we're moving forward. There's some extremely unique architecture features here that our design teams absolutely loved. So we want to make sure we celebrate those features, and we go in and do things to just try to enhance the experience. This follows along the Chisholm Creek system. Many of the features of this pool are going to add the zero depth entry, basketball goals, a slide. One thing that we're excited about is if you see McAdams off of 135, you see those big, tall pillars in the distance. We want to make sure we put some sort of lighting structure to really celebrate this pool and really show where it's at and bring people to the area. Climbing wall additionally is added, as well as some fun toddler slides and other wet elements. So moving into our phase 2 projects, the first one we're discussing is Harrison Park. We've seen a lot of many activities in this park. The attendance in this park has greatly grown over the last several years. We've recently added a dog park to this area, so we thought this was an interesting and excellent park to put another splash pad feature. It follows along the Spring Branch system of Wichita. This has kind of an oasis theme. It has a very fun scorpion that's very interactive, water falling on kids with buckets. Also has a fun little waterfall that kids can play in and hide in, with also dry elements as well as some play structures and slides. Linwood Park is the last of the pools that are being converted to splash pads. This pool has a mossy theme stone. It follows the Chisholm Creek system as well. This is kind of something we would have kind of like a natural setting. We had a lot of comments from the public. We want to see natural themed ideas. This one really celebrates, going into nature, playing on mossy stones. There's a water mill that's actually a callback to Wichita when we had the original Wichita mill, which is the reason where hydraulic is actually so named. So there's going to be kind of an abandoned water wheel that kids will have water features that we can play on and to enjoy. Little walk across area, big walking area that you can see as the path meanders around. We're excited to see how this one comes together. The final of the splash pads projects is Plainview. We're looking to nestle a new splash pad into the 2 existing shelters that we currently have at the park. This one is a Nautilus theme. It also follows in along the Cowskin Creek water system. You see as the water kind of flows around, children will be able to kind of play with the different structures. This one also has a nice mix of both wet and dry features. Once again, it's a very interactive park. It's a very inclusive park. It's not just for little kids to play in. It's one that we want to see the whole families to come out and to enjoy. Harvest Pool. Harvest follows along the system of the Cowskin. This pool still has quite a large following for a swim team. So we're going to be retaining the 5-lane area for the swim team, but we're going to pull out a little bit of the deck and create a 0-depth entry. We're going to be taking out the wading pool and adding some shade structure, rental spaces, once again, artificial term, and creating a new slide off into the deep end area. Manissa Pool, which follows right along the little arc. One thing about this pool that we're very excited about is this is probably the most claustrophobic of all of our pools when we talk about deck space. So we're very excited to be able to pull that deck out and both to the north and to the west side, really give our customers an area to come and to enjoy, stay with their families, picnic, have fun. This adds quite a few shade structures, the 0-depth entry as well, the artificial turf berms. We'll be adding a drop slide to this location where we're taking out the high dive, and once again, quite a bit of shade in this area. College Hill Pool is the final pool area. It follows the the Park Hollow Creek. This is a project that we're looking to renovate some issues that we have in the bathhouse. We need to replace the filter system in this pool, as well as we have a settling issue with the deck. We're going to be able to address that. So here is a copy of the budget where we sit. Everything you see is in our current opinion of cost, where we're right under $18 million. A lot of that money goes towards replacing of the filtration systems. We have the defiltration system, which is a wonderful system. How it's not very cost effective. It is quite a bit of waste of water on how we have to operate it. It does take quite a bit of staff labor time. So we're looking to transfer that into a sand pit filtration system. What we've added to the option A and option AB are some things that we want to discuss as we're moving forward. The designers and the architects, as we are really our local artists, as we're really broken into these pools, as we're really getting to the area to see what we're doing, there's a lot of issues that still need to be addressed. There's a lot of issues with the bathhouses, and there's some interesting ideas that we can do to kind of move forward. Option A kind of focuses on some architecture things we can do, as well as adding some curb appeal and some aesthetics to the locations. Options A and B kind of take us to that over-the-top, extremely incredible, unique experience that people can have as they come to our sites. Option A focuses on added upgraded shade structures at all of our locations, changing out those turf berms with actual artificial turf, which is much more maintenance friendly. Adding a new clear roof for Ailey Pool. Most of our bathhouses have these big open areas. We need to be able to do something to help preserve our buildings to last quite a bit longer. This would add a new water feature at McAdams Pool. It would take some of our linear dividing walls that we're adding and maybe add some artistic elements into it instead of just being a wall, make something more fun and more aesthetically pleasing. Add a splash wet deck area for Orchard and Minnesota Pool. We could also improve the entry gates, improve the facade of the sides of the pools, not just a boring brick wall, but something fun and something that we can be very festive and that we can enjoy. And we would like to include some aesthetic lightings that will help out with not just really giving the pool some more character. It's additionally great for security, and as we're staying open a lot longer, all the lighting we can get at the pools is going to be helpful. Option B includes all the elements that we discussed from A, but like I said, this is the one where we really get to hit the pools out of the park. It can create some very interesting themed shade structures for each of our pool locations, turtle shells, birds. We can integrate more sculptures into the elements that we're putting in. Also add some hidden surprises for people to find. Everyone loves the troll that's hidden down off the Riverwalk. You know, it's things like that that we want to add into elements of pools for in the splash pads for people to find and to enjoy and to celebrate. It also includes a lot of elements of dry play. So, there's a lot of things that kids can do when they're not just in the water. Focus on community partnering on different ideas. We really want to hit the education awareness, talking to 259, how can we add more things about water safety, history of Wichita, and the celebration of the pools in the neighborhoods in the area. This plan has been reviewed and supported by both the Park Board and Design Council. Staff recommends the City Council adopt option 3 for the Aquatics Master Plan and authorize the preparation of plans and specifications. And at this time, I will stand for questions.
So my first question is, the staff recommendation obviously is option 3, which is different because last time the aquatics plan came to us, it came with no staff recommendation. But do both of those A and B additions, are they included in the staff recommended action?
We left that open for council with our budget. Since we weren't having an exact budget, we wanted to keep it under that 18 million that we first discussed. We knew the project had additional funds that were looked at one point. Staff recommendation, we would love to see both A and B as well.
But it doesn't come with a staff recommendation.
Mayor, we're still refining the concepts, and we have 20 million in the updated CIP that will be coming to you, which means we could get A completed. It would be a stretch to be able to get B completed. We would need to come up with additional funding if the estimates, the preliminary estimates, are accurate.
And then are there art elements built into the basic option 3?
Yes, sir. All
Okay.
the pools, all the splash pads have art elements already integrated into it.
So art's not just option B?
Correct.
Although option B looked like it was heavily vested in some artistic features. There's also artistic features into option A.
Correct.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. How did we end up with staff recommendation of 5 pools north of Kellogg and 1 south of Kellogg? Because I know you mentioned that a lot of South Wichita is industrial, but it's not. There's very densely populated. There's a lot of children that like to swim there. It's not just factories.
Sure. This plan focuses on our existing pools and structures. And so these were the pools that have been identified over the last 6-7 years as the ones that were most sound mechanically and structurally, the ones that had the best attendance, the ones that had the most community support.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone in the audience like to address the council on this agenda item?
My name is Vernette Chance. I live at 10316 East Countryside Circle, which is in Ms. Tuttle's district. I have 2 questions. One,
Pull the mic down just a little bit.
down a little further, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First of all, with McAdams, what will become of the existing light pillars that were designed as part of that swimming pool complex? And the second one is, I would like a estimated date of construction for the ones in the first group that you're talking about.
So I think all of the first groups intended to open next swim season.
So they're going to start work on them this year?
This year.
Okay,
Right.
all right. Oh, does anybody know anything? Well, I guess it would be the man behind me who would know about the light pillars.
We'll get to some of that when we
Pardon?
get through we'll get to some of these questions at the end of all of the speakers.
Okay.
Trish Heilman, 139 South Fountain. I just wanted to say thank you. Option 3 has been something that the city has worked really hard on for a really long time. We're College Hills in support, President of the College Hill Neighborhood Association. College Hills in support of Option 3 and really likes that we're keeping neighborhood options, that we're keeping the ability to have swim team viability within the city. The amended hours that Brian was talking about, that's huge for families to be able to come home, dad comes home, everybody goes to the pool. That's really great, and I appreciate your listening to the community on those things and just really making city swimming options really viable things here in Wichita. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Mary Dean, 3327 East Bel Air Court. I think everybody knows what my option was, but I totally agree with option 3 based on the designs that I've seen that was displayed this morning. I think it would work for all the pools, including McAdams, which I'm a very stern supporter of. And I want to thank the council, thank the planning committee for all their efforts and what they've done to make this good for all of Wichita. Thank you.
Rhonda Cox, 2340 South Crestway. I'm in favor of option 3. I think it's the most equitable option, and I really appreciate the council and everybody taking time to really think this through and get community feedback. Me and my kids spent 4 hours at Linwood yesterday, so I just want to comment on the no high dive thing. I have children from 8 to 18, and all of their favorite thing is a high dive. And I just want to say that I watched a group of 5 teenagers go to Linwood yesterday, and all they did was dive off the high dive. So they're obviously part of a dive team, and they're obviously practicing because their school is not open in the summer. So I think maybe you ought to reach out to USD 259, and I know East has a high dive team. Maybe one location should have a high dive, and that's basically all my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. Elizabeth Bishop, 8518 East Long Lake. I am delighted to see the choices, the presentation today. I, of course, am in favor of option 3. I hope that the community will rally around to the longer hours, the fact that the Aquatics Master Plan with the new operation process is going to offer so much more. I know as a grandmother, I intend to buy gift tickets for the swimming pool for my grandchildren, and I hope that gradually the process of taking part in swim lessons will increase. I think every child deserves the chance to learn how to swim. It's life-saving. Also, we will look forward to the pools, the renovated pools opening. What I would really like to see, and this is a wish list, is some of the combination of the splash park features along with the pools, so that as children go to swim and have a good afternoon, they have an option of things to do, all of which are very active and very good for them. I think the comments earlier about the high dive is also very important and should be listened to for future plans or as we go forward with the design features. Thank you very much for all the work that's been done on this. We truly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Doug Ballard, 920 Buffum. I want to thank the city for all of its concern, and I'm supportive of option 3. A couple of things that I'm a little concerned about is First of all, I want to say that teaching lessons, having belonged to Westlake Pool from 58 to 69, I worked at Westlake and Country Acres for 5 years. And in particular, if you do not teach lessons, then you are not going to be successful. And it may not happen right away, but you've got to teach lessons as part of the programs. I have seen literature that does not include the opening on Saturday. I live close to Manissa. Last summer, my grandson and I went to Manissa virtually every day, every weekday. And on the, as Rhonda talked about, the high dive, if there was anybody in the pool at Manissa, regardless of the weather, there was always a line at the high diving board. And there's a group of boys in particular from about 11 to 14 that just live on that high dive board. And it bothers me that for 50 or 60 years, we've had high diving boards and now we can't do it. So what happened? So there's a risk in everything. So anyways, I congratulate you on, I know how hard this is to work out these many different locations. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Brian, a couple of things to address. So what is happening with the light pillars at McAdams?
They're going to be retained, and like those are one of the lighting elements that we'd like to add lights on to, like I said, as you're going by 135, you can like really see the pool, notice the location. We're not looking to take away any of the current existing architecture.
And then are all of our pools opening on Saturday?
Yes, with the new plan, we'll have pools open 7 days a week.
Okay. And then are any of the pools going to retain a high dive?
Not at this, oh no, with current plans, they will not.
Is there room to fit one in?
We'd have to do some different changes to the deep end areas. New regulations that have come out over the past several years since our pools were built. You want to have a little bit deeper depth than what we currently have. You also don't want to have a slope that's so close to where people are landing. That's the reason why we're looking to take away the high dives at this time.
Is there the ability to adjust something in between? So maybe if, I know that that's dependent on how high the diving board is. Is there an intermediate dive that would satisfy it?
There are options that we can talk with our designers to see what we could do, what funding we could maybe shift around to look at retaining at least one high dive at one location. I think we would need to do a little bit extra deck work than we were originally planning, but if we can shift some money around for it, I don't see that being an issue.
Might take a look at that.
We will.
It's not an elimination of all diving boards, just the high dive.
Correct. We'll retain the 1 meter boards. We're just looking at removing the 3 meter.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I know we've had several different presentations on the aquatics plan. Did we reduce the amount that was going to Ailey Pool from our last presentation?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did we reduce the amount that was going to Ailey from the original presentation?
From the...
Bob, do you remember? Did we reduce the amount?
I'm sorry, on the budget?
On the Ailey Pool specifically, did we reduce the budget? I thought we had in there to rebuild the shelter building and stuff that burnt down originally, and we were doing some additional things, and is this a reduced amount now?
It's with the project, now that it's over 12 projects, as opposed to the original one, it was only just the 9. We've added, I'm sorry, it was really just the 10 projects. We've added the 2 projects at the Plainview and Harrison. The money's been spread out quite a bit more. So we've got all the pool projects got reduced a little bit. We're not looking at using this funding to create a new shelter at Ailey. I believe those are plans that are looked at with other elements, maybe funding for another source for a new shelter at Ailey Pool.
Can you tell me what the amount was that we were talking about a year ago and what the amount is now?
On the budget page, I'm sorry, can you bring up the PowerPoint again for me, please? Looks like the budget for Ailey Pool at this time is 1.26. And I believe at one time it was a little bit closer to like 1.6.
So took out around $400,000?
Right, but we had to do that with all the projects. All the locations had to take a reduction.
Thanks.
So to answer the Vice Mayor's question, though, you said that we're looking at rebuilding some of those facilities through a different budget?
Right, that's from a different area. Mr. Houtman and Mr. Davidson will be able to answer better on that one. But we are looking to eventually put shelters back into that location, but we're not taking the funds out of the aquatics budget to do that.
So what's the timeline for that? Anyone know?
For the shelter,
For the shelter?
I have to fall back to Mr. Davidson.
There haven't been a specific timeline that's been identified now for it. The main portion of the budget was towards making sure that we can get through this, through the third plan and being able to do those features that were, got the biggest community input on. So as we look at doing additional things with the facilities itself, that's part of what we're gonna look at for funding sources to be able to do that.
Okay. Councilmember Claycomb?
Thank you. I think there was one other question from the audience that I wanted answered, and that was about the swim lessons. So we're teaching swim lessons
Absolutely,
at all the pools?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And the plan is to continue that going forward.
Okay. And then my other question is, on these option A and option B, when you look at any of the renditions, there are things that are marked OPT and TYP. Like if you look at one of the, no, it's on like on one of the drawings.
Like on the slide, current slide? No, go back
No, a drawing of, a sketch, yeah, of one of the pools or splash pads.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, like this one, over on the east side, artificial turf berm, OPT. So is that an option A or B? Are
Correct,
those-
so the option on the artificial turf berm is that we're having a term, the turf berm in there. The option is it gonna be grass, natural grass, or will that be artificial grass? That's the option.
Okay, so this isn't identifying, there's nothing on here that identifies what's option A and B on these sketches?
Correct. These sketches all show what's in the base budget. A and B are
Okay.
completely off of these sketches.
Okay.
The only thing that they wanted to point out on this one is the option is, we're gonna put a turf berm here, and that's in the base budget. If we go with option A, though, we'll be able to make that a artificial turf berm as opposed to natural grass.
So what's the option on the wall?
That was one of the options where instead of having just a wall, you can add some, a little more architecture to it. You can add some pictures. I think there's kind of a picture kind of there, that sculpture right there.
So there'll be a wall.
There's gonna be a
but-
wall there no matter
But
what.
if we go with option A or B, it'll be a cooler wall.
Correct.
Okay, and what's the TYP on those sketches mean? There's one down.
Shade tree type.
Oh, type of tree, okay. All right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, I am ready to make a motion, and Mr. Manager, do you want us to include the two options? How do you want to address that then?
Mayor, at this point, I'm not sure we have the ability to fund option B unless we make adjustments in the CIP. So I would be recommending option 3 with asking staff to explore the feasibility of then taking in the projects that are included in A. And we probably would adjust those in order to make sure that they stay within the budget. So it may not be as robust, fully as robust as shown in A.
My biggest concern is when, again, I'll ask this again, we ask for art to be integrated into the project, and what was just explained to us on the wall is a plain wall or a wall with art.
Right, and I think Brian can elaborate on this, but you have art options that are included in the base already.
So with all the projects, there's art added with everything. We're improving the aesthetics, the changing of the linear fencing to being wider. That's an art element. Adding on the splash pads, each one of these splash pad designs are art elements that are already included and added. What we've done with option B is take these art elements to the next level, some things that will go from, some good shade structures to very unique shade structures, something that really makes that pool stand out or that location stand out, something that gives a much better experience.
So if you eliminate the shade structures portion of that, because that's gets a little subjective, could we look at the other art elements in option B outside of the shade structures? So we're getting a shade structure either way. So it's just a matter of how artistic the shape of the shade structure.
Correct.
So I would love to see us look at some other art features in option B that maybe aren't as aggressive financially in terms of what it means in shade structures and cost, but just art elements. And maybe we can fit some of those in.
So, Mayor, if the council would like us, first of all, we're looking for an acceptance or endorsement of option 3, approval of that.
Sure.
And then if you'd like us to make sure that we have a balanced budget with a mix of elements from A and B as appropriate at each of the facilities, we would do that. What I'm trying to do is keep it at that $20 million that's in the CIP right now.
I get that. Maybe we could do that by adjusting the shade structures.
Exactly.
Which
There
are
a
the
number of things.
expensive elements.
I think what we can do is continue to engage the design team and our art consultants to kind of get the best experience at each of the facilities, if the council endorses going above what the
Right.
base is for art.
Okay. Councilmember Fry and then Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to applaud staff and everyone that's worked on this project. This has taken a lot of years, a lot of effort, but two things I'm very proud of is that you figured out a way to operate much more efficiently, which I believe will get us with the more hours, the more days, the more lessons, the more opportunities for play. And that is fantastic, because right now, the way we operate's very limited, and that hurts our ability to get better cost recovery. Having those evening hours and those extra weekends, fabulous. And then secondary, creating great public spaces. These are wildly imaginative, very unique. It's an opportunity to do something right. It's going to have lasting impact for generations. Each site being different and very creative, I hope will encourage people to visit all of them and not just their one that's in their neighborhood, because they are different. And so I would encourage us to push and take this to that next level. I know it's a stretch. I know it's an investment, though, that if we're going to keep these type of structures and we want to get the most bang for the buck, we have to make them appealing, exciting to want to go to, and it needs that extra element. And so I know we're talking about $1 million extra to go from option A to option B, but I think it's worth the investment for the long-term life of these facilities. Thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo everything that Councilmember Fry said. Great job to staff. I appreciate the cost recovery. I just want to ask a clarifying question. So option 3 that we would vote on today, has it been approved by the Design Council, or is it option 3 with options A and B?
Option 3 has been approved by the Design Council. With their motion, they'd asked for more funding for the project, but they did approve the designs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Well, Councilmember Fry and Councilmember Tuttle already pretty much said everything that I was thinking. Councilmember Fry, I think, hit it on the head. We're trying to create quality of place. We're trying to be unique, which we do. In some cases, need to go above and beyond, and really are only talking about $1 million more only, I know, in such a tight budget. Sorry, Mr. Manager. But knowing that we'll pay for that over a period of time and not all at once, I'm pretty comfortable we can handle it. I know we'll have to shift some things, but it's just my opinion that we need to make sure that it's responsible to save money when we can, but it's irresponsible not to do it right. And I just want to make sure this is done right, and spending that little bit extra, I think, helps us do it right.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo what my colleagues said. Thank you to staff and all your hard work. I know this has been a long process, even going back to 2012, so This is amazing. I think this will make our neighborhoods even better. I think that anyone who is interested in this will be really excited once they are built, and especially with an accelerated schedule. This is great. So great work. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one more question, Brian. The cost recovery is going to go from 33% to 60%. Do we have
Yes.
an estimated amount for that?
We don't have the amounts. We were provided these numbers by budget, to kind of looking at all the terms, but they were very comfortable with that 60%. We actually had them go, like worst case scenario, and we worst case scenario, we're right at 60% cost recovery.
Okay, but we don't have an estimated amount of what that would be in terms
They
of
have
dollars?
that document, but we didn't put it into the PowerPoint.
Okay, just looking for money.
Sorry, yep.
And I would also add that this has been a long journey. I don't even remember the year that the subcommittee through the park board started. 2011. So since 2011, we've been trying to figure out what to do with this, and it took us a long time to get here, but option 3 is a good option at the end of the day. Here's the only thing I will add as I get ready to make this motion, because we didn't really define exactly what's in option A and option B. I'd still like staff to come back with potentially a blended option of those two that we can formally see. And we'll make that in the motion, because we don't know at this point. And I'll say this again. I think the majority of the people are going to love the added art elements, but when we talk about a shade structure, and because the cost of one shade structure could go up potentially double in cost because we tweak a little tiny different shape to that, I think the community is more prone to say, give me great shade, other artistic features, and I'll be fine. And especially when we can stay in the budget. So I would move that we accept option 3 under the new revised aquatics master plan and ask staff to come back to us, adding a blended of option A and B to potentially stay within the original budget, but define better what we actually are getting so that we fully understand what we're voting on at that point in time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Man,
I know you said you don't want applause, but I think everybody in this room, I think when you engage with the community and the city, and thank you, Robert Layton, and
thank
City
you.
Councilman Brandon Johnson. I'm
Madam-
proud of everybody.
Madam Clerk,
Thank
next
you for
item.
everybody being here. Thank you. Long term.
DER 2018-0003, Wichita Places for People Comprehensive Plan Amendment for an area of approximately 62 square miles bounded by 29th Street on the north, 31st Street on the south, Ridge Road on the west, and Rock Road on the east.
All right, good morning, Mayor and council members. I'm Mary Hunt with the Planning Department, and today we're talking about Wichita Places for People. Today we're going to focus on the planning process. I know all of you have seen different presentations on this plan. I just want to take you back to where it all started. The Community Investment Plan was approved in 2015. That alone was a 3-year process. And in it, it identified an urban infill strategy that was necessary. It asked to promote infill development, attract and retain the talent that we desire, and take care of what we have. So the planning process also included identifying funding. So we have a partnership with the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and with their assistance, we were able to obtain funding for the plan that eventually became Wichita Places for People. They came up with 80% of the funding for this, which came from federal sources, which were a combination of surface transportation program money as well as transportation alternatives. And together, those were put together and called Planning Walkable Places. And so we contracted with Gould Evans Consulting to assist in developing this plan. But more importantly, we engaged the community at every stage of the planning process. So we formed the Urban Infill Advisory Committee back in 2017. They began meeting shortly after that. There were 29 members, and they were a cross-section of the community. There were stakeholder groups, including Mennonite Housing, the development community, Habitat for Humanity, our business community, as well as citizen representatives from each district, neighborhood association representatives, and then a team of 24 technical advisors. This group convened for more than 2 years, which is a considerable commitment from a group of citizens. So with that, we went, here we go. Our public engagement portion of all of this included 17 advisory committee meetings where the public was welcome and did attend. We had 4 public events at our libraries, radio, television interviews. We had 6 DAB presentations, and then 3 civic group presentations as a sample. We also had different city council presentations, planning commission meetings dedicated only to this. We had our visual preference survey, had 300 responses there, and we had social media throughout. And we had a unanimous approval from our advisory committee and our planning commission and 5 of the 6 DABs. And last night, we met with DAB 1 once again, and they did vote. They recommended approval. Their vote was 5-3. So what's next? The next thing is that we prioritize the action steps that are listed in here. And we will need the Planning Commission and the Council's guidance in how to do that. We're looking at trying to make more practical regulations to help make this happen, looking at perhaps the establishment of a land bank that's customized for our needs, looking at all of the economic development tools that are currently available, and then, of course, how the CIP will fit into this. So today I ask you to adopt the recommended action of the Planning Commission and adopt this plan as an amendment to our community investment plan. I'll stand for questions.
Any questions at this point? Don't see any questions. I do have a question, probably more towards staff at this point. Is there anything in the adoption of this plan that is restrictive or policy in nature that would actually guide building or zoning options, restrictions? I mean, any changes that really are law in nature?
Any amendments to the zoning code that, as you know, regulate land use and establish the development standards would have to come back as separate amendments specific to the unified zoning code that would have to go through Planning Commission, then ultimately to the City Council for consideration and ultimately approval or denial.
So
But all this plan does is set up the authority for staff to explore the tools needed to implement the plan, and that could involve amendments to the zoning code, or at least proposed amendments.
And then from then, everything comes back to us anyways for a formal vote?
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, that would apply also to the items that were listed on the slide that Mary had, a land bank, the use of incentives in the district, as well as CIP projects that would support that.
Right, it doesn't grant staff any extra authority, or there's nothing that comes with this?
No, this is the first step in a planning process.
All right, I appreciate it. Councilmember Claycomb?
I have a follow-up question to the mayor's question. So more specifically, what would that process look like as those things come back to us? What kind of public engagement would there be? What would the steps of that be to bring back amendment to the zoning code?
Specifically to the amendment of the zoning code, we have to publish by state law. We have to publish in the newspaper. There is no individual notice with area-wide zoning changes or regulation changes, but we do have to publish in the newspaper, and then Advanced Plans Committee would review it, the Planning Commission review it. There would be a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and as part of the process, we would obviously have stakeholders and neighborhood representatives that would be involved in discussing any proposed amendments, and then we typically send those out to the DABs as well, just like we did this time with the plan. So there would be extensive opportunity for input and comment.
And that'd be on each and every change, right? I mean, we could bring them as a package, but it would.
Right, it would be a
them.
package,
Yeah.
but yes, and the land bank, we're going to have to explore how that would work if that's something that we end up moving forward with, but there will be opportunity for anybody to be involved and comment.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
All right, any other questions? So I will add again that by council policy, this typical body does not open it up to a public hearing. In fact, the public hearing for this item was held at the MAPC meeting. And then, of course, we gave people the opportunities to attend the DAB meetings. But because this is a little unique, and I've heard from some folks that would like to see these proceedings opened up today for any public comment, I'm going to move that we suspend the council rules in this one particular incident and do allow the public to speak, and specifically suspend policy 9 for this agenda item and allow public comments today.
Second.
I'm going to add one more thing to it, because it's unique and this is all they're allowed typically at different governing bodies. Let's keep the comments to 3 minutes. So we'll set the timer for 3 minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and allow speakers 3 minutes. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now open it up to the public, and anybody that would like to address the council on this particular item, you're welcome to come to the podium. We would encourage you to be as brief as you can. Ryan, thank you for being brief. Any follow-up questions for Ryan? I'm kidding.
Thank you, Mayor. Ryan Nett, 1650 South Meridian. Been a developer here in town, local developer. We're involved in Emerald Bay Estates, some infill projects that were in the NRP area on some twin homes. I've done a couple twin home duplex developments. Currently working on one at Webb and Pawnee. It'll be 68 lots total, 27 of which will be two-family. The one project I just finished on was 211 South Green. It was an empty lot there was a house demoed there in the 80s, I believe, or early 80s. I built a 1,515 square foot story and a half house on that lot. Wanted to point out that the margins on that are extremely low. I had the lot that came with the house next door is the only reason I really did it. And since there was a house there previously, there were no sewer and water equity fees. So that was a very unique situation where an infill lot actually works. Some of the things that are a big struggle for developers, I mean, as you know, if there was a way for us to make infill projects work and redo, dilapidated houses and things like that, it would already be done. We'd be all over it. But there are things like 3/4 of the cost of the demo of a house, like a $7,500 demo of an older house. 3/4 of that cost is dump fees. The It's been common practice since long before I was even around to bury rubble on lots, tear down a house and push all the concrete and everything right in the middle of the lot, bury it, and we don't know where any of that's at, and that can be extremely costly and fatal to any project. Infrastructure, older infrastructure, and I think any kind of like tax abatement or something like that for buyers. Something I experienced on Green was people weren't sure about the area. They loved the house. They weren't sure, they need some kind of incentive to invest their money in an area that is up and coming. It's not done yet. It's something that's gonna happen. So they need some kind of a commitment from, like a tax abatement that we as the builder get and then pass along to the buyer.
Ryan, try and wrap up your thoughts
Yep,
real quick.
I think that's pretty much.
Okay.
the-
You're advocating for some additional tools,
Yes, yeah.
land banking, some other kinds of opportunities to help redevelop inner city neighborhoods.
Yeah, lower the risk for us as developers, basically.
All right, I need to get by and see that house. I heard from some of the folks out there that you did an outstanding job and making a difference in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Yeah, the neighbors are already investing in their own houses on that block.
That's awesome.
It really, it was infectious. It was a good
Thank
thing.
you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Janet Reddick, 1510 East 9th, President Wynn. I'm okay with building a house, one house on a empty lot. But when you come and build a house behind a house, if you go on a 900 block of Ohio, the 900 block of Wabash, and the 900 block of Cleveland, that is already done. And every house is empty. And it don't look too good for the neighborhood. And then when you come and do that, it congests the neighborhood, puts more people in the neighborhood than it should be. So I'm against that, and I think we need to get more public feedback than just 2 years you've been in the making. I hear about it 2 weeks ago. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right that the city can do some things and then throw it on us 2 weeks ahead of time when you already really made your decision on what you're gonna do.
So I don't think this gives them the authority to build a house behind a house.
Well, that's our understanding.
No, it doesn't. We'll have staff address that when
Okay.
we're done, all right?
Just get more public feedback instead of just
All right.
your feedback. Get
Right.
other people's feedback on
Yeah.
what we should do when we come in other people's neighborhood when some people don't live there.
Thanks for sharing. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Ann Fox, Wichita Habitat for Humanity, 130 East Murdoch. I've been working as an infill developer in the established central neighborhood and was a member of the Urban Infill Committee. I think it's very important to note that the process and the recommendation we're making is really a framework to make it possible for us to work together in the established central area and to make it possible for market rate projects to be done in addition to nonprofit projects. The committee recommends some areas of strength and stability. They're the wonderful, unique neighborhoods in our community that are doing well on their own. But I think the primary recommendation of the committee is to look at the areas of opportunity, and that's pretty speak for the areas where there is blight, decline, decay, abandon, et cetera, areas that need some uplift, and when they are uplifted, then the rest of the neighborhood, like Ryan explained, also uplifts around it. And so the framework really requires that we look for zoning changes to make sure that the neighborhood's unique characteristics are honored whenever there is new development. And I think that's the power of the plan, is that it's not just a one big zoning change across the whole organization or across the whole city, but allows for that neighborhood by neighborhood approach to say what will match the characteristics here, what will serve this neighborhood, and what is appropriate, whether it's a residential street or it's a more major thoroughfare. The other aspect is, as an infill developer, the acquisition of property is the most difficult and challenging aspect of our work. And in our community, we don't really have an intentional plan for the use of abandoned properties. Eminent domain cannot be used with a land bank. It can only be used for property that would go to tax sale or where a family doesn't know what to do with their property. And we believe it would be really providential for the community to develop a land bank with private citizen participation so that we're making intentional use of vacant properties for the highest good of the community. Thank you for the opportunity. 31 representatives served on this committee. It was huge. They were representing the 75 neighborhood associations, the ECA, and a lot of information is available to the public. It's very robust, but there's many more discussions to go. Thank you for your support, and we fully endorse the plan.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the Wichita City Council. My name is John Todd. I live at 1559 Payne here in Wichita, Kansas. Thank you so much for suspending your rules, basically, and allowing citizen input. I think it's very important. Everyone wants economically vibrant neighborhoods in our city with secure private property rights. I believe the long-term sustainable economic uplift in housing has always been driven by the private sector, tax-paying businesses using their own funds. I am not a fan of land banks that are created by government for the use by private-public partnerships in land development. The problems I have with it, it allows municipalities to cede power to select private organizations who control the property. And I think for a lot of citizens, that's a problem. And when we have a vibrant private sector community like we do, I can tell you that I've been watching property for quite some time, and we're seeing houses like this created and rejuvenated. Several of you, let's see, Councilmember Bluebaugh, Clendenin, City Manager, we've had others basically have taken my tour basically through the 67214 neighborhood and also into Park City to see the land development, the redevelopment we did on infill lots up there. All was done, I was the land bank in 1992 in Park City, Kansas. We didn't need a private-public partnership to do it. So my basic recommendations to you, be very careful on how you set up. In fact, I would just ask that you not use land banks at all. I really think that the private sector needs to step up and take advantage of opportunities that are absolutely everywhere to do infill and to do rehabilitation to properties that will create low-cost, sustainable housing that creates the opportunity for home ownership, which I think is really the desired goal of government on all levels. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Next speaker.
Trish Heilman, 139 South Fountain, College Hill Neighborhood Association President. I came here today, I'm actually in favor of the concept of having a strong core that has lots of people living in it. We use our infrastructure better, our transit better, all those things are great. I'm really nervous about the number one implementation, sort of the biggest tool that this plan has, which is the code changes. I know that you've said that code changes would take further process, but here we're speaking because the plan, the number one way that they achieve their plan is code changes. So we're just coming and giving input on what we foresee as being something coming down the pipe, right? As a neighborhood association, College Hill, we don't have a ton of issue with blight and problem with infill. We've sort of got a good model going where people snatch up houses in our neighborhood and are doing really good things. And I understand there are neighborhoods that do need this infill TLC. And I support that completely. What I would like to not happen is I would like to not have the entire center of our city be exposed to these code changes when we're really trying to target certain areas that need infill TLC and support. We want strong neighborhoods in every neighborhood in Wichita, and that means having opportunities for people to be able to have some margin in creating that infill. But that is not needed. For instance, Riverside is nervous as well. College Hill is nervous. There are areas that we just don't need the extra development attention, and I don't particularly want to defend myself. We're all neighborhood people. We're volunteers. We don't, we're not full-time developers. Going to an MAPC meeting sounds like an easy thing to do, but a 2 o'clock meeting is not always doable. So if I get exposed to more, developers tend to like to be in those strong neighborhoods. And if I get exposed to more development attention, that's not necessarily what I want. Thank you very much for your consideration. We need to be looking at these infills. I actually wanted to be on this infill committee, but I was told because my neighborhood doesn't have blight that I was not, that wasn't for me. But then here I am potentially affected by their outcomes. So I just ask you please to surgical precision, not broad brush. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, just a reminder, there are no code changes today.
Yes, sir.
No code changes. There's no authority given in this adoption.
Ellen Corner, 1117 North Roosevelt. I guess I'm going to address what you just said, is that if you approve a concept, you also approve the methods with which that concept will be achieved. And the methods with which this concept will be achieved will be zoning changes. And in those zoning changes, they are going to allow, how can I say that? They're going to allow landlords, developers, or homeowners to indeed build, one of the recommendations, build what they call an ADU, which is an additional detached unit. And they even have pictures of how they build houses behind houses, or apartments or buildings behind houses, so that your next door neighbor who used to have a single family house will now have apartments or duplexes in the backyard that you used to look out at. And it would have a negative impact on neighborhoods. Now, I know that people have said that this has been in the works for 2 years. I only found out about this a couple months ago. And I think that I am a majority of the public that did not know what was going on. I ask that you today take a look and take a step back and allow the public to evaluate this, neighborhood associations to get information out to the neighborhoods, to their people, and have them understand that indeed, if you accept this concept, you are accepting the method with which this concept will be fulfilled, which is zoning changes. And in doing so, I ask that you have, I appreciate that we had this time. Thank you so much for this. But we did not have enough time for everybody to come. A lot of people can't make a 9 a.m. meeting or a 2 p.m. meeting. I ask that you be transparent with your constituents, that you give them time to look at what zoning changes possibly will happen with this. It's very hard to go back and roll back on, well, we've already approved this concept, so we have to figure out how to do this. And let them look into something very important to them, how this concept will change something that they really, really would be concerned about, and that is places where they live. Places where they live. And not allow something like this to be a negative effect. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Mayor, I have a question real quick.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Johnson, you had a question for the last speaker?
Yep. Ellen, I had a question for you real quick. So you mentioned the difficulty in going to meetings. So the Wichita Urban Infill Committee, I think, met for 2 years at 4 p.m. on Mondays. This came to every district advisory board, which met in the evenings. I believe there were also 2 or 3 public meetings as well that happened in the evening. So what would you suggest we do to communicate better?
One of the things that I was really concerned about, because when I found out about this, I thought, I got to find more about, I got to figure out more about this, because I looked at the zoning. I looked at it and I read through the zoning changes. And I went to the District 6 meeting where they were presented this to the DAB meeting. And I asked them, I listened to the presentation, and I was really upset that the presentation showed these beautiful pictures of changing downtown, changing businesses, housing situation. Never once did they talk to the DAB people about the zoning recommendations in order to achieve this. I brought it to the attention of the DAB people, the DAB members, and they were not aware of it. I did not feel that they knew about these zoning changes.
So my question is, how would you propose we communicate better?
I would love to see a town hall where it's in the evening, where we have, give the neighborhood associations input or time to get this out to their people in their neighborhoods, and then have a town hall and make sure that it's not just in a piece of paper, in the newspaper that people usually aren't going to read, and that we have the ability to have your constituents, all of them, come and speak of a time when they can make it. It's very hard. I know people that wanted to come and speak here today that couldn't because they couldn't get away from their jobs. And so I would ask town halls. I don't know what the cost is of doing something like that, but I think a town hall meeting. This is very important. This is something that I think the citizens of Wichita should take an active part in the design of their city, the changes that would happen in their neighborhoods. And it is indeed a zoning change ordinance.
Councilmember Claycomb, did you have a question?
A question that, to follow up with Councilmember Johnson. So we did that, the town hall
When did
meeting.
you do that?
I don't remember the date. I'm sure staff could tell us.
3 of them.
Four of them.
Yeah, 4 of them that built up to this. And then the very last one was actually an open house where everything was presented. You could walk from station to station, give any input you wanted. And so I go back to Councilmember Johnson's, what more would we have done?
That is probably where my friend went and saw and realized. She delved into the actual workings of this concept. And I was not aware of that. Did you have a huge turnout of just general citizens? Were they aware?
Well attended. It was at the library. It was at the Advanced Learning Library just a little over a month ago.
Yeah. That was
Well,
the
that's
very last
when I
one.
first heard about it.
And
Well, then I would ask you. Well, I asked three DAB members. I went to 3 DAB boards, and I asked them about the zoning changes. They understood the concept, but they didn't know about the zoning changes. They didn't know
So again, clarify, we're not making zoning changes today. There are no zoning changes in this recommendation today. 0 zoning changes.
If you approve the concept, you have to approve the means with which they're going to achieve that concept. And
That's
it makes
not-
it easier for those zoning
Mayor,
changes to come.
If I could.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, I do
Thanks.
want
I don't think we have any more questions for the speaker, do we?
No. I just want to elaborate on some comments you've made and some other council members. This document is meant to outline possible tools for changes in the central area of this community. As we said at the very beginning, all of those need to be approved by the council going forward. I envision that this is going to be an area by area or neighborhood by neighborhood discussion as we talk about zoning changes. And so what may be appropriate in one neighborhood may not be appropriate in another. And so I understand the concern about how we engage as we go forward on the zoning issues. And what I would say is it's going to be a long process where we go to different neighborhoods, different parts of the community, and say, here's what we're anticipating because of the housing conditions and other things in your neighborhood. Are we getting it right? How would you like to see your neighborhood change? And then we would talk about the various tools, including zoning. But it's not, I don't see it as a one-size-fits-all, a blanket through the zone. And I just wanted to clarify that.
And the reality is, if you were going to hold evening meetings, and we do this in neighborhoods, or a discussion with an individual neighborhood, that's the proper time to go out and have an evening meeting and really engage the neighborhood when you can really define what's going to impact their neighborhood. That's the time to have that meeting. So, next speaker. Councilmember Clendenin, did you have a?
Well, a follow-up for the city manager. Can you outline what the process would be for any zoning changes or tools that we might want to deploy? what would the approval process be for
Well,
that?
we're still working on that discussion. We know that that's going to be the longest, most laborious part of this process. And I think what, I'll need some time to sit with staff and talk about how we'll do that and what areas of the city we'll first engage. I understand the concern about zoning, right? And that's been with us forever in terms of concern about property rights. And so we want to do this in the right way. We may want to focus on a couple of neighborhoods that are target areas, and then start to gather information in partnership with the neighborhoods there. So we can talk more about refining the vision on what they'd like to see the neighborhood become.
But then any changes would need to come back to us as a council. We'd have to have a public hearing.
Planning commission, you'd start with the planning commission, right?
So there's still that process of public hearings.
Right,
before.
but I don't envision bringing something to you or the planning commission that we haven't first discussed with the neighborhood.
Thanks.
All right. Next speaker.
Mayor, council members, manager. I'm Byron Adrian with Mennonite Housing, 2145 North Topeka. I would like to express my support for this plan. I am in agreement with the focus of the plan, which is to allow different types of projects to come closer together to make neighborhoods, businesses, and amenities easier to get to and more walkable. I know there's been discussion about potential zoning changes, and I understand fully, and I think that everyone that was on the advisory committee understands that in this document, it is not proposing zoning changes, but what I like about it is that there's a lot of good research and information that's included in there to possibly take a different look at potential future zoning changes. I think evaluating the zoning code to allow for building types to be considered as opposed to looking at, say, just density caps, I think that's a good way to assist and help to make future developments more walkable. I am in agreement with the plan recommendation to create a land bank. I have seen in other communities where land banks have been very effective to further development activity. At Mennonite Housing, when we are working on development activity, that is oftentimes one of the most difficult parts of the process is land acquisition. So again, I do support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there again. I'm Alan Kaler, 7924 West Birdie Lane Circle, speaking as the president of Bike Walk Wichita. You may think it's curious why I'm up here speaking about this issue, but our mission, as I stated, is to make walking and biking safe, equitable, and appealing. But the purpose of that is to make Wichita more livable and connected and accessible. We want to make Wichita a better place to live. And that's what this plan would move toward. It's proven that communities that encourage biking and walking are safer because people are out in the community meeting each other. They're stronger economically and socially, and they're healthier. We want that for Wichita. And the people of Wichita want that for Wichita, as demonstrated in the numerous public meetings and forums that have been held. As stated in the vision book for the People for Places plan, there is strong resident support for creating more places within Wichita where residents can walk, bicycle, or use mass transit on a daily basis. As I'm sure you're very aware, there have been numerous reports done about how to make Wichita more economically vibrant. We've engaged many consultants over the last few years to come in and talk about what Wichita can do to accomplish that. And there have been a number of public focus groups and public meetings and so forth asking the citizens what they want and how to accomplish it. All of those reports, all of those consultants, all of those meetings have come to the conclusion that one of the best ways to make Wichita more economically vibrant is to create places where people want to be, to create some place where they want to walk, shop, dine, and be entertained. The People for Places plan facilitates this by identifying places to create a more walkable environment. And it eliminates unnecessary restrictive would adopt a policy to eliminate restrictive regulations and to encourage development of more walkable places. There are a lot of details to be worked out, but first it's essential to have the policy in place that would encourage a livable development. You can take a step toward making Wichita a more livable, accessible, and connected city by adopting the People for Places plan. We urge you to do that. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Good day. My name is Estela Varga Ibarra. I live at 2146 North Wellington Place. I was encouraged to speak because my neighborhood is not represented by anybody right now. So my concerns are just to keep the charm of my neighborhood. We are trying our best to improve our neighborhood, which is the No More area. My house was built in 1889. So it's not a historical, what have you, but it's my home. And I am concerned about having other apartments built next to me or behind me or what have you. I was not aware of this until a couple days ago because, like I said, we don't have a neighborhood association active right now. So I know you said you had public meetings and what have you, but if we don't have anyone in our neighborhood that is to give us the information, how do we know? I mean, even though you might have social media or what have you, but if we don't have a main person in that role, we won't know what's going on. So that's why I'm here. Also concerned about overcrowdedness. Our neighborhood is very unique. A lot of people are scared to go to our neighborhood, but it's a beautiful neighborhood. No More is doing a great job right now. So, like I said, I don't really know too much about this, but I do not like a lot of things that I'm hearing. So I just think it would be better to have more time for the public to understand, and especially in the Hispanic community, many people do not understand or do not speak English or do not understand English. So it would be, were any of those, in those public meetings, were those anyone translated in Spanish or any other languages?
We'll get that answer to you.
Okay, so that's one of my concerns too, that sometimes most people don't have the full understanding of what's going on in their city. So I'm just a concerned citizen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Going once? No. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. So I do have some questions for staff so that we can clarify some things that were said. Again, want to emphasize, does this give anyone the authority to go out tomorrow and build a house behind a house?
No, they actually have that already. The current zoning code, you can get a conditional use that would allow what in the zoning code is called an accessory apartment, but it requires a zone change. It's public notice, individual notice, like a standard conditional use that you see. They have that right today. What you're adopting today does not increase that authority, does not make it by right, does not change the zoning code at all.
Are there any code changes in this adoption of this plan?
No.
Okay. Did we have a need to use translators at any of the public meetings? Did we translate into Spanish?
Not.
Was that request ever needed? I mean,
Not
did
that I'm
anyone
aware
make that
of.
request? I know that we have neighborhood resource officers and PIO folks that are out in the community speaking Spanish, and we often have some of that on our Channel 7. But, and you're pretty busy at Evergreen.
Yeah, you can come to Evergreen with any questions. We have a translator there.
There at Evergreen?
All the time.
Okay. Did you get any requests on this? Did you hold it?
No, we did
Okay.
not. We didn't get any requests on this.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
And a couple of the meetings were even held at Evergreen. The open houses were,
Yeah.
two of them, I think, were held at Evergreen.
Yeah, most of the meetings were held either at 5 or 5:30 and went from 7 to 7:30 in the evening.
Okay. Councilmember Claycomb, did you have some questions?
No, I just have some comments, Mayor, when we're ready for
Okay.
those.
Are there any other questions at this point? All right. Thank you.
Dale. First of all, I just want to thank everyone that came today and spoke today. I think it gives us a better sense of the concerns regarding the details as we move forward. But today we're adopting a concept, and I think it's important to recognize that the purpose of what we're adopting today is, as it says in the agenda report, to reduce growth pressure in our rural areas, to provide efficient use of our land, to utilize existing infrastructure and services that we already have, and to improve the quality of life in areas experiencing abandonment and decline. And those are really important initiatives that we want to work on. I think that it's also, while I didn't attend all of the infill committee meetings, I did attend some of those, and I know that staff and the committee really pushed the consultants to provide some suggested zoning code changes. This is one way to get at the concept that we're being asked to adopt today. And so there could be other methods for us to get to the end product. But we did really push, I think. Isn't that right, Mary? We really pushed the consultants to give us some suggestions. And so while we may not all like every one of these zoning code suggestions, I think that what we have to recognize is that those come back and we look at our zoning code, that there are other ways to get to the concept that we're being asked to adopt today.
Thank you. Councilmember Clinton, didn't you serve on this committee?
I did. It was a long process, process of educating us and then engaging the public. And so, again, I want to echo everything Councilmember Claycomb said. This really is concept only. I'm happy that anything that would need to be changed would need to still come out to the public. We'd still need to get public input, and would still need to come to the council for a change.
Right.
But knowing the issues that we have in South Central Wichita right now, with blight, with houses that need to be renovated and fixed up, trying to pull back some of the regulatory things that make some of that happen are very important. We want to make sure that we're being friendlier to developers wanting to develop and fix up neighborhoods, but at the same time being friendly to the neighborhoods. And so we're going to continue to listen and make sure that we're doing things in a way that works for everybody.
Yeah, well said, and just would add that this is obviously an amendment to a planning document that is kind of a one-size-fits-all. Today, it's in place. And then what we do at that point in time to actually define the features that neighborhoods want, that individual neighborhoods want. We go through an additional process of hearings, zoning code changes, and anything that will impact the neighborhood, just like we've gone through in the last year dozens of times with cell tower denials and a wide variety of things that come to us on an individual basis. So it's not anything that's adding restrictions or authority or power, and it's a document that's already in place. And it is sort of one size fits all, but we define that, we refine that through the process of bringing it down to neighborhoods through hearings. And so at this point in time, I think that we've had ample discussion, and I would move that we adopt this amendment to the MAP, of the MAPC, and adopt the plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council member appointments and comments.
Any other appointments, comments today? Vice Mayor?
Just wanted to give a shout out to Sam, who turned 7 years old today.
Happy birthday, Sam. Man, we should have had a Sam Day.
A proclamation.
Absolutely. Councilmember Clendon,
Mayor,
don't sing.
I won't sing. I am not in a condition to sing today. I just wanted to recognize two very special people in our community. George Theo Harris and Janet Theo Harris were married a couple weeks ago, and I promised them that I would say hi to him and recognize their matrimony.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I would move that we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Cast your vote. We're adjourned.